Hello, good afternoon. I am Janie Buckland with the West Virginia Few Families United for Education. Are you tired of my mug yet? Because I get tired seeing it in the screen. Exciting day with the Hope Scholarship Board meeting. I attended in person. I'm still kind of a weird stalker hanging out in their parking lot. I had to move my car because I was in the way of some landscapers, but wanted to get this done. I live about an hour and a half from Charleston in southern West Virginia in Mercer County. So I wanted to get this done before I got on the road and headed back. Great meeting, and then got to hang out afterwards and just kind of talk with State Treasurer Riley Moore and just share our excitement and ask some questions of Amy Willard. If you're following along and have been on this journey with the Hope Scholarship Program, you know that in their office, Adam is the Hope Scholarship Director and tasked with a lot of work there. And Amy Willard has other programs inside the Treasurer's office and then also does a lot of work on the Hope Scholarship. And so it was great to get to connect with them. Also, Dustin Lambert of the Department of Education, who's tasked with non-public education through the department. And Dustin does a fantastic job in considering families and the providers who are serving non-public students. So all that being said, let's get to it. What did they say? What does it mean? How are we supposed to move forward at this point? So just some housekeeping, I guess, for those of you who may be unfamiliar with how all this works. I know I used to be extremely unfamiliar with all of it. So they had their meeting and they made motions, and they have, the chairman, which is State Treasurer Riley Moore, made a motion to accept this emergency rule, and it passed. And so they're going to file this with the Secretary of State, and this what we heard today will become in effect. And then James, who works in the Treasurer's office, explained that it will come into effect, and then basically once the promulgated rules that we were so excited about that came out back in January, those are going to go under legislative review in session, and then they'll take precedence. Okay, so today was about the families of West Virginia and making sure that they have their needs met in response to that injunction. That is what today was all about. So the rule that is going to be filed and go into effect will do these things. All right. Some numbers for you. On July 4th, there were 3,422 applications that had been submitted and considered by the Treasurer's office, 3,422. That includes some that were on hold. That includes some that were had needed new information processed. Remember, we were getting birth certificates and proofs of residency together, right? So that includes those. And the exciting news is that this rule is going to assure that every one of those applications that had been received by July 4th are going to be considered for eligibility. So if you were already awarded the scholarship, great, but I know many of our families were asking, hey, wait, it's still set on hold. And so what about us? And I love that they thought about that. They thought about you. And so you are included in that. And you are going to be, I'll get to the communication in a minute, but just know you're included, okay? And so as long as your student is found eligible for the program, so as long as nothing changed, coming up on that and it was just dotting I's and crossing T's, then your students are going to be eligible. There were 260, I like to call it apply to applies, or applies to apply, that came out after the application window closed. You could apply to apply by submitting a form, and basically you could do that under two premises, if we will. So under two conditions, okay? One, you would just didn't know about Hope Scholarship and you were like, hey, I didn't know about this. Now I know about it. I would like to apply. They were still considering those. And 260 altogether. They were part of those were families who had just found out about Hope Scholarship. Part of those were students who were becoming eligible, who had met criteria. So maybe they had gone into the public school system and they hadn't hit their 45 days yet, but they hit their 45 days after the May 15th deadline, 16th, if we remember back to that being on a Monday. And so they had submitted their application to apply, right? So out of those 260, they are all going to be considered. So those of you who had applied to apply, if that had been submitted up to the July 6th date, then that is going to be considered for review to be awarded the scholarship. So now let's talk about that same thing. In the here and now, under those two conditions, who can apply? If you knew about Hope Scholarship, if your child, well, even if you didn't know about it, if your child was eligible for the Hope Scholarship prior to July 6th and you just didn't apply, you will wait until February when the new enrollment opens in order to have your application considered for the 23-24 academic year. So if your student was eligible for Hope Scholarship, right, leaving public school, coming up into kindergarten, and you missed the application deadline, you will hold tight. You will be able to apply when the window opens in February for the 23-24 academic year. If your child has become eligible from July 6th, right? They've met eligibility requirements. You are going to be able to apply. So you'll reach out to the treasurer's office. We'll make sure you know where to go when that information is provided to us, but you are going to be able to apply for your student. And once awarded, you can begin participating in the program. All right. So application window, February. Disbursement date for the full amount by January 15th. So everybody's saying, when is this going to take place? January 15th, by January 15th. So just really lastly, a couple of things here. For those of you who enrolled in private school and okay, so that's one subgroup. You enrolled into a private school for this semester. If you have paid your tuition out of pocket this semester, your provider may refund you that portion that you paid. They can go ahead and refund you, and then they can bill your ESA account, the Hope Scholarship account. So that's one way to get your reimbursement. And I love that they're thinking about these families. It feels so amazing to be a part of addressing this, because I've been a part of listening to your concerns for so long. And so your provider can reimburse you and then bill your ESA account in January. That's one way. Your provider may not be in a position to reimburse you. You need to hold on to your invoice, your receipt that shows that you paid, so that you can submit that for reimbursement. There will be a process for you to be reimbursed for that from a qualified provider, or for qualified services, I should say, qualified expenses. Okay, so if you rolled in private school. For those of us who were under exemption C, right? So our Hope Scholarship NOI was not a legal satisfaction for an exemption from compulsory attendance. So many of you did have to submit a homeschool notice of intent in order to be exempt from school this year. And so you were homeschooling, right? So if you have purchased curriculum, signed up for programs, any of that, and those providers do intend to qualify for Hope Scholarship, you need to keep track of all of those in order to be reimbursed. you are going to, both of those groups, private school and those of us who are homeschooling, you are going to receive a full reimbursement. If you went into public school, you're going to receive a prorated amount based on how many days you stayed in school. They did say that if you choose to stay in school for this year, then you will not be under the Hope Scholarship Program this year. If you stay in public school, you'll need to reapply for that 23-24 academic year. You do have time to make that decision over this next month or so while all of the things are being ironed out. But if you're choosing to leave public school, you're going to receive a prorated amount. If you choose to stay in the public school this year, then you'll need to reapply for next year. All right, that's how you're going to get your money back to you, to the parents, for the child's education. Make sure that it goes where it needs to go. Lastly, on communication, the treasurer's office is going to be communicating directly with families. And in order to make all of this work, you have to be plugged in. None of us can do this for you. You have to make sure whatever email account you used when you signed up on the portal or whatever it was, communicating that you have access to that inbox and that you are checking it regularly, because in the coming weeks, you are going to get a survey from the treasurer's office or from Step Up for Students, and they're going to be asking you, what did you do? And this is exactly what I've been talking about since July 6th. So we're here to help you. If you need to wrap your brain around what you were doing, feel free to reach out. But you either enrolled into public school, right? Public in person, public virtual, public charter, in person, or charter virtual. You either satisfied compulsory attendance in public enrollment, or your child attended a private school, a non-public school, or you filed a homeschool exemption under Exemption C, the homeschool exemption, or you submitted a learning pod or micro school exemption N as in Nancy. Those were the options, okay? And so you are going to need to communicate to the program manager, to the treasurer's office, what you did, so that they can figure out what your prorated amount is, or what how you're going to get reimbursements. So you need to understand what you did. We have a fancy profile chart if you need help figuring that out. But you're going to have to be in communication with them, and that is going to ensure that you get the right amount of money into your ESA education and savings account. If you're walking through this alone, please do reach out. I'm embarrassingly easy to find on all of these social media. You can send a message. You can email jamie@wvfue.org, and we will make sure that we get you connected with accurate information. The treasurer's office is going to file this with the Secretary of State. They are going to have the information updated on their website ASAP. We're going to continue to direct traffic back to them, hopescholarshipwv.com. That's all I've got. I'm Jamie with the West Virginia Few. I'm super excited for the families of West Virginia today. You guys have a great afternoon.